Good evening, hello and welcome. Yes, it's Friday, it's 8 o'clock. That means it's time for Buster's Virtual Jazz Club. And I'm very excited to be here back for my second show. I didn't honestly know if it would last this long, but here we are, 2 weeks in. And so, welcome everyone. We're streaming live now. We're live on YouTube all around the world to infinity and beyond. So, if you are listening on YouTube, we do have the chat box here now. So, if you want ask any questions, you can put them in the chat box. Do pop something in there. Just say hello, just so I know you're there. Because it would be awful if we sat here for an hour and a half chatting away and none of this went out. So it'd be nice to know if anyone's there. So do say hello in the chat box. So the other thing I have to do is before we start is say a big thank you to my new Patreon supporters. That's right, I have a Patreon page now, ladies and gentlemen, and there'll be more on that later. But I'd like to give a big thank you and a big shout out to my new Patreon supporters this week. Joining me on Patreon are Paul Benwell, thank you Paul, and Laurie Benwell, thank you Laurie. Steve Clark, thank you Steve, and Fran Rayner. That's very kind of you, thank you all of you, that really makes a big difference. So I'm very excited to have this guest tonight. He's a fantastic musician and it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot to talk about. He's absolutely a credible musician and saxophone player. And he's also a very talented writer who is widely acknowledged as an expert on the history of jazz and has been commissioned to write many sleeve notes on many great jazz albums. He's won many awards, including the BBC Jazz Award Rising Star for 2007, Jazz Journal Magazine's Critics' Choice Album of the Year for 2009, Best Saxophonist for the British Jazz Awards 2011, and also winner of the prestigious Services to Jazz during the British Jazz Awards 2016 for his biography of the great British tenor saxophonist Tubby Hayes, who we'll talk about as well. And not only that book was also nominated for the People's Book Prize, the Penderin Music Book Award. It was nominated as one of the best books of 2015 by The Guardian, and it was awarded the Certificate of Merit by the Association of Recorded Sound Collections for excellence in historical recorded sound research. Amazing. That's a proper academic stuff, that is. So we'll be very pleased to talk about that. In 2016, Simon was appointed to the board of patrons of the Jazz Centre UK alongside Sir Michael Parkinson, Dame Cleo Lane, Jules Holland and Van Morrison. He's performed with the biggest names in British jazz, playing in bands led by Sir John Dankworth, Stan Tracy and the Ronnie Scott's Jazz Orchestra, but he's best known for leading his own formidable quartet featuring some of the best rhythm section players in the country, with whom he's recorded 3 albums, what we'll hear from tonight. And he's toured extensively all over the UK. So let's meet him, my guest for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Simon Spillett. Hang on, mate. Oh, crikey, here we go. Oh, there we go. Hello, Simon. Oh, I thought that was going too well. Hello, mate. How are you?
I don't know how to follow that build-up. You know, I wasn't sure who you were talking about. And then I realised it was me. How are you? You're right.
I'm very well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thanks for giving up your time on the Friday evening and coming and sharing some of your music with us and chatting about
I've cancelled the gig for this.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's my first question. How's things? How's it been? I imagine it's been pretty tough for someone like yourself who's so extensively works live and performing is really your mainstay, isn't it? I think it's fair to say that's the thing you do, you know, is you get out, you go on the road and you play lots and lots of gigs. And obviously the last few months have been, you know, a complete change. There's been nothing. So, I mean, have you been writing as well? Because I know that's something
I've been writing.
Yeah.
A few gigs have trickled in. I've done a few very sort of different gigs over the past couple of weeks. And things are kind of coming in towards the end of the year. There's work there, but of course it's not the volume that it normally would be. and it's certainly not the volume that it was at the beginning of this year. So I've been practicing a lot. I've been writing a lot. I've been listening a lot. I've been doing all the things that we would normally do anyway, just more of, apart from gigs, because it's gone very, very, very quiet.
Yeah,
it's been a tough time for all of us musicians to try and keep positive and to try and keep focused. But it's also given us, I think, a period of respite when we can kind of reevaluate what we do. So in a way, it's been useful. But it would just be nice to get. I love playing live. That's what I like doing. That's why I got into the music. Yeah, it's what I think I do best, and that's the thing I miss. I think we all do. Yeah, at the moment.
Of course, yeah, it's been tough, and just not being in front of an audience and playing the music, and actually, I think I miss the musicians as more than anything. Just playing and seeing my friends and just playing together and doing and just that. It's funny, the things you take for granted, isn't it? That you dedicate your life to, and we all like to moan about things, but when it's taken away, you do really appreciate it, don't you? More.
Well, there's a massive social side, because this is we travel a lot, so and if you're working like I am, which is very often as a soloist, I've got friends all over the country that I haven't seen that I would have normally seen a couple of times this year. So there's a big social fabric that's missing. That is part of what we do. It's not just about going up and turning up and doing the gig. There's people that you just don't see.
Well, this is very interesting, because this is what I've got a big thing about this, and I talk about this a lot, which is that jazz, when you play jazz, the person makes is as important as the instrument. Because you're not playing a part. No. It's not like doing a show where you just play the notes and it's the same every time. It sort of almost doesn't matter who's doing it. It's like a trumpet or a saxophone. But when we're playing jazz, it's you. If I'm playing in your quartet, I'm playing with you, and I play differently when I play with you as I would with someone else, because you draw something out of me, and it's the person, and that's what we miss. I think.
Yeah, I think there's something that's very personal about it. I like the different personalities that we play with different bands. And what I also like about jazz, which I've always liked about it, is you and I haven't seen each other for a few months, and we've had a quick chat before we came on air. And it's like we saw each other yesterday, and the conversation goes straight in on the deep level things. It's not kind of surface. Okay, it's humorous and light, but we're also able to. And that's one of the things that I find attractive about jazz music, is you go all over the place and you can talk on a really deep level with people instantly, because there's a connection, because you're together in the music and committed to it. And I think that's a really enriching thing. And to have that taken away from us all of a sudden is, it feels weird, doesn't it? It was very strange.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. That's a good point, actually. Maybe because, like, playing jazz, you have to be very open. You're quite sort of naked, aren't you, in a sort of way when you walk on stage? So
I tried that one.
Have you done? I've done that gig. There's a gig we play. You know the one I mean.
I've never done it, but I've heard all about it.
It's great. They're lovely there. Yeah, I've done the Naturist Club. Yeah, we've played there a few times. The only thing I'm not so keen on is the plastic chairs. But anyway, moving swiftly on.
The guy that runs the gig approached me with an offer I couldn't refuse, and I had to turn my back.
Very good. And this is the level we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Here. Very good.
Okay, mate. 5 minutes in, we've found our level.
Well, look, what we'll do is, if it's right with you, I'm going to play the first track, and then perhaps we'll come back and talk a little bit about how you got started and some of your early influences. So with this first tune, we're going to start with an original, and this is I think it's fair to say, for somebody who's been such a prolific performer, that your recorded output is relatively small compared to some musicians who've been at it as long as you have, and I know that you've got some views on that, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this is, so we've got 3 albums to sort of mine here, and they're all absolutely wonderful recordings. I mean, you do set a very high bar. So this is from your first album, which was the Introducing Simon Spillett. It's from 2007, and this is when you won the Rising Star Award. And this is an original, and I think this album, I think you did the classic thing where you played. It's a nice mix of standards and some original tunes as well. It's about half and half, isn't it, of original tunes, which is always a very good move, and especially for an opening album. And the band here, of course, is John Christensen on piano, Andrew Klinder on the bass, and Martin Drew on the drums. I mean, what a rhythm section.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And this is one of your original tunes, and it's called Another Setting. Yeah, fantastic. And that was from Simon's first album there, Introducing, which is on Woodville Records, which is a record company set up by Alan Barnes, isn't it? I believe.
That's right, yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic, Simon. And, you know, great playing, great rhythm section there. And you've always got some really stellar guys there. Martin Drew famously worked with Oscar Peterson, and John Christensen, of course, with Ronnie Scott's and all those great visiting American artists. And we'll talk more about John later, because I know you had a very close association with him. But I wanted to sort of go back to the kind of beginning, really, and you know, without spending too long, but like just get an idea of what got you started. What was it about this music that really pulled you in? And now I know some of your story, but like, perhaps some of the listeners won't. And so as a teenager in, what are we talking, sort of the late 80s?
That's right, yeah.
It was probably quite unfashionable for you to be into this music, you know. And but I understand your father was a very strong influence with his record collection.
It was, yeah. I mean, the jazz was around the house. Students sometimes ask me, how do you get into jazz? What do you listen to first? I was very lucky. I never had to do that. It was just one of the musics around the house from when I grew up.
Right.
So there was never a question of like, oh, jazz is that weird stuff. It was one of the things. We heard lots of music in our house. We're a musical family. Mum and dad.
They're musicians, right, as well?
Yeah,
And
my grandparents and uncles and brother, and so music was a really strong thing. But it wasn't just one music. It wasn't just jazz. But jazz was, my dad absolutely loved jazz and big bands. So I grew up with it from before I could even, recognise it. I didn't know what jazz was. It was just another music. And then I became very serious about it when I was probably about 11, 12. I wanted to be a trumpet player. I wanted to be Louis Armstrong. I saw him in the Glenn Miller Story, and that's what I wanted to be. And then I realised that I wasn't supposed to be a trumpet player. Then I wanted to be a trombone player. So my dad was a trombonist. So I played trombone for about 3 years. And then I actually realised that saxophone was what I wanted to do.
This is very interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but we're pretty similar age, and like yourself, I remember being very unfashionably into jazz as a teenager. My dad was a trumpet player, and he's like he really encouraged me to, and I started on trumpet and couldn't get along with it, and then ended up switching to drums. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, I always admire people that started on one instrument and they've played it all their life. I mean, I had to work my way into the saxophone. I mean, trumpet wasn't for me. Trombone really wasn't for me. There's lots of trombone players in my family, and I was kind of like the black sheep. I was the first person to play the saxophone.
The dark side.
I realized. I mean, I was just thinking back to people I was listening to, like Charlie Parker and Paul Desmond, people like that.
And this was what you were 11, 12,
13, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah, and that's quite advanced.
There was nobody in my class who knew Dizzy Gillespie was. And my teachers used to get mad at me because I'd draw all these pictures of Dizzy with his big puff cheeks and his beret in my margins of my school books. And they'd say, you should be concentrating on doing your science homework.
I've seen some of your drawings. They're very good. Yeah, that's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Before I wanted to become a musician,
you were a keen artist, weren't you? Yeah.
Very much. And then
I remember now.
Over. But it was great because I was in love with jazz. It was a real love affair. In my teens, I couldn't get enough of it. I was reading about it, listening to it, going to see gigs. Oh, what it's like at that point. You're in love with it.
Yeah, obsession. I mean, I get obsessed with things anyway. But I mean, I know exactly what you mean. That first love of the music and the records, and also playing the record over and over and over and over. Because I mean, for me, it was like there were only a few I had, so I just really knew them very, very well. But I think the other thing that I know that was so you've got the one influence of the recordings, so presumably like all the greats, Stan Getz and Charlie Parker you mentioned these, but also you were going along to a lot of live the British jazz Sunday lunchtime sessions, which is quite a thing, isn't it? It's quite a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tradition. I was only talking about that to somebody today about how that was part of our education. And it's also part of what informed what I wanted to do as a musician. I'd go to my local jazz club, which was the back room of a pub. So
is that Merlin's Cave? That's it, right. I've played it. Literally, it's in a shed, isn't it? At the back.
It was in the barn at the back. So literally, I would be 16, having paid my £2 entrance fee and bought a Coke at the bar and a packet of crisps. Yeah. And I would sit there at the front of the by the stage, little tiny stage, and it'd be a resident rhythm section and guests. And I saw all those people: Peter King, Dick Morrissey, Art Thiemann, Willie Garnett, and some visiting Americans, people like Spike Robinson, Ken Poplawski, all these guys. And I was sitting as far away, as close as the microphone was, almost.
Yeah, just agog at this.
Yeah, and I just sat there as this young kid and amazed by it all. And there's something when you're playing an instrument and you've struggled a week to learn something, and you turn up and there's a guy who just gets out of the case, doesn't read a note of music, puts it together and stands before you. Yeah. And I found it really inspiring. I never found it off-putting. I'd look at these people and think it's possible for another human being to play the saxophone like that. And that's
what I want to do. Like that was the moment.
Seeing people like Dick Morrissey and Art Thiemann. It was just, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
And because it's live as well, right? Because although those are seriously heavyweight players that you're getting to see in the local pub, which is I think that's fairly unique British jazz. This whole thing of the back end of the pub, and these guys would have been playing, all over the place, and to see them up close and that as well. But that thing about experiencing it live at that age where you're impression where you're into it and it just hits you between the eyes, doesn't it? It's something. Recordings are fantastic, of course. We love the records, but I can just picture the scene. And of course, those sessions were very well attended back then, weren't they? They were
it was amazing. I mean, looking back at it now, I was a kid. I really was a kid. I was 16, 17 years of age, and I knew nothing. And all the people in there had all been listening to jazz. They were the kind of people that would as we get sometimes on gigs now, would turn around and say, "Oh, I remember when I first saw Count Basie, or I first saw Lockjaw Davis, or I first saw Roland Kirk." So they had the stories. So there was a real sense in that, more so than the records, of people passing stuff down to you, not just the musicians, but the punters would say, "Oh, yeah, I've got this great story about Tubby Hayes or Ronnie Scott or whoever." So you really.
There's a connection.
Kind of on the inside track.
Yeah,
the records were fantastic. I was listening to Charlie Parker. I was listening to all these people on record, but it was seeing it live that changed. And
also culturally, there is a difference to, that whole British thing with a packet of crisps in your hand at the back of a pub on a Sunday lunchtime, pint glass of Coke. It's like...
I used to sit there, and I was the original kid that would turn up with his pocket money and pay to get in. And maybe have saved some money to buy whoever the artist was, buy their album, and sit there absolutely agog watching these people. It was fantastic. And now I'm old enough for it to seem a bit romantic, but at the time it's absolutely thrilling. It just turned my life around. It was amazing, really.
Wonderful. And we're going to hear another track now, and from that same first album with the same lineup. And this is a standard. We're going to hear a ballad. And you are very well known for your absolute incredible technique and phenomenal prowess on the instrument. But you like all great players, you really do play beautifully on a ballad. And I think that is as much of a test of a musician, a jazz musician, as anyone. And all the greats, they really played ballads. It's not easy getting that across on a ballad, is it, in many ways? And this is a lovely recording. It's an old standard. It's a Jimmy Van Heusen tune. It's called But Beautiful, and this features Simon with the same quartet. Wonderful, absolutely beautiful. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? That was But Beautiful, and that was taken from my guest's first album, introducing Simon Spillett, which is available on Woodville Records. Lovely, Simon. I mean, incredible. Like playing ballads like that, absolutely beautiful. How did that session go down? Was that for your first album? There was that something that you was that a fairly stressful thing, or did you feel like I'm ready for this now? Because you had that great band. Had you worked together a lot when you made that record?
A lot. We worked together.
Sounds like it.
That was done at the end of 2006, so we'd been together for about 18 months when we did that.
Yeah.
Two things. I couldn't believe I was doing gigs with that band, because it was the last rhythm section of the Ronnie Scott Quartet.
That's right.
And it was amazing. I mean, it was just like, there was a learning curve every gig, but a really good learning curve. I never felt that they were, like, who is this? They were really lovely. To Martin, Drew, John Critch, Andy Clun there. It was great. It was amazing. Looking back at it, I can't actually believe it happened.
Oh,
Doing the album, to do an album in one day, most of that stuff we gigged lots and lots and lots, because I was very busy, and it was just felt that with the first album, you've not really realised what you've got yourself into. That happens on the second album. The first album was like, it's like the cork coming out the bottle. Bang! I'm going to show everybody what I can do. And that's why I like that album, because it actually sounds like a young guy trying to show people what he was able to do. It's so fresh. Of
course, you recorded Cherokee on there as well, which is
I did, yeah,
astonishing, absolutely wonderful. I mean, so ladies and gentlemen, do check that out. It's well worth checking out. It's just not enough time. I wanted to talk a little bit about moving on now. So you had some lessons with Vic Ash, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, I studied with him for about 2.5 years. He was in the BBC Big Band at that point.
Yeah.
And what was really great I wanted some saxophone lessons, but I wanted it to be for someone who was actually a practitioner as well as a teacher.
Yeah.
And that was really rammed home, because you'd say to him, okay, can I see you in 2 weeks for a lesson? He said, hang on, I'll check my diary. Oh no, I'm on tour with Tony Bennett. Right. So you used to get used to, but he was amazing. I mean, I learned a lot from him. And do you know what's really interesting about that? People say to me, you went to a jazz musician to learn the saxophone. Was he teaching you jazz? The first lesson, Buster, he put Tune a Day, book 1 up on the music stand, and we worked through all those things. So he was teaching me to play the saxophone. He wasn't teaching me to play jazz. He
was a great session player as well, though, right? Yeah. He did a lot of sessions. So, properly...
He had a considerable command of the instrument, the craft of the saxophone. Right. He taught me about practicing properly. You had to play all keys. That was it. That was it. It was just someone who made me realise how serious you've got to be if you want to play at a certain level,
Well, you obviously put the work in, because you've been very, very dedicated to your plan and studies and everything, and also I've heard another little story. Am I right? Apparently, Bill Evans lived nearby.
That's right.
But you didn't realise at the time.
I didn't realise that when Bill Evans used to play at Ronnie Scott's club in the 70s, he had a very good friend who lived in Cheshire, the town that I was born in and I was brought up in. So when Bill played Ronnie's, he would come and stay in Cheshire. And he actually stayed probably about a third of a mile from where I was growing up. And he'd go for walks in the park. So I have this kind of sort of fantasy of me being a little tot, being walked through the park by my mum and passing this incredible jazz, but not knowing that he was there.
It could have happened.
Amazing story. Just to think that guy kind of blew the Village Vanguard sessions, Wolves for Debbie, all those things, actually used to come and stay in the town where I was born. That's a great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's a true story. It's a true story, and I'm really pleased about that. We never. Unfortunately, we were just that much apart age-wise.
Yeah. Wonderful. So you're studying with Vic Ash. You're obviously putting a lot of work in, turning up things, and at some point they're letting you sit in, right? And this is kind of starts to be your real apprenticeship, and presumably you're getting noticed as well by some of these guys. They don't let anyone just sit in, do they?
Well, I got noticed. I mean, there was a big. I would say it was 10 years of I turned professional when I was 21. I was still living at home with my mum and dad, and I was doing all kinds of weird, wonderful gigs, the good, the bad, and the ugly, sometimes all in the same trio. And So I was, working in complete obscurity, not on the jazz scene at all, just doing all these kind of function bands and weird rock bands, all kinds of things, but sitting in on jazz gigs. And it was a lot. I was a very slow learner. There was no sort of overnight I became really proficient. I was a very slow learner.
Well, I don't think it works like that, does it? I mean, you got to pay your dues and put your time in, don't you?
I never went to a jazz college or went on a jazz course or went to the Guildhall or through NIJO, which is not great, but it makes you do what you do. I was learning it the old-fashioned way.
There's pros and cons, man. I was
learning it the old-fashioned way, sitting in with people. And I can remember there were people who were really nice to me: Duncan Lamont, Dick Morrissey, Willie Garnett, people like that, Art Thiem, and they were lovely to me. And they obviously saw something, which was probably only sincerity, because I really couldn't blow very well in those days.
Oh, they must have seen something. I mean, like, people might not realise, but just briefly mentioning, you, Simon's kindly supplied some lovely pictures for us to play while the track's on, and these are all these people you're talking about are people that you then have spent most of your, professional career working with, and are featured in all these wonderful pictures that you provide.
I was really lucky, when I started not just working with these people, and I was working with people like Danny Moss and Bobby Wellings and Peter King and Don Weller. I couldn't believe it, Buster. These were people I would go and see, and they were like royalty. I always said, I've said to students, when I was growing up, if you were going around the pub jazz circuit, Bobby Wellings, Art Thiem, and Don Weller were like the Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, and Lester Young from my generation. They were the elder statesmen. To suddenly get to work with them and become friends with them, and get to know a bit more about them, it really felt like welcome to the club. It was a lovely feeling. I was very green. I probably didn't know what I was doing, but it really felt it's very special. Personally, it was very special.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with a few people, not as much as you, but I've always found them very guys like that just to be very generous and just open and kind, and they got nothing to prove. They're just out to play. They want to have a good time, and they're not going to roast you up. But I think they saw something in you. Come on, that's because the fact that you then went on to work so much with them, and they certainly did welcome you with open arms. I know. I
think one of the things that really helped was that I knew the era that they started out in. That really helped, because they could talk to me about all these guys, and it wasn't like, who's that? So we had a connection, and that helped. I really think that helped. It probably helped more than them playing, if I'm honest.
Really this is interesting, because you are a acknowledged expert on the history of British jazz. I mean, there's no two ways about that. And I wonder if this thing is maybe where this kind of fed in from, this experience of being exposed, and then that hunger of wanting to know more about it, and being around these guys and looking up to these guys. You've gone and then really, really thoroughly researched all this. Because
I think they look, when I work with people, it started with people like Vic Ash, all those guys of that vintage. They wanted to tell you the stories because they knew that you were someone that really appreciated the stories. You weren't the young guy who was going to say, "I'm sorry, I'm not interested in that."
Because you were
keen. I felt they really opened up, and I felt I learned a lot, not just about their past, but actually how to be a musician and what music meant for their generation. It was, culturally, it was a really big thing for me. It changed my life. Really changed my life.
Fantastic. Well, we'll talk some more on that. I just want to play another track now. So we're going to play the third track from this album. That we're going to. There's obviously more tracks on there. We're going to play another nice. This is a nice bright sort of swing tune, and this is another original, and this is called New Beginning. And this is one of Simon's tunes. Here we go. hope you're enjoying the show. I just want to take a moment to tell you about a new way that you can help support me do this, and that is through patreon.com. That's right, I've got an account now, so the link's below here, patreon.com Buster Birch, and if you go along to there, you can now make donations by Visa credit card, so you don't have to use PayPal if you don't want to do that. And the advantage of Patreon is that once you do it once, it will automatically deduct on a per show basis. So instead of having to fill in the forms every week, if you want to make a regular donation, then that will just automatically deduct straight to your credit card each per show. And that is hugely helpful to me, because it means I know that I've got a certain amount coming in every time I do a show, and that really helps me plan ahead and keeps the viable sustainability of the show going. There's 2 levels of sponsorship. There's my silver and gold membership. All of my Patreon supporters will get a big thank you personally from me live on the show, and the gold member sponsors will get an additional Spotify playlist which will be sent to you each week. It's something that I'm putting together. It's personally curated by me and will feature lots more albums by the guest artists each week. So it's a great opportunity to get to know this music much better. If you're really enjoying the show and you like the little tasters that you're hearing, that's a great way to get to know this music even more and enjoy in full comfort the full sound of the full albums. Thanks very much. Back to the show. Yes, and we're back here with Simon Spillett, ladies and gentlemen, live. We're live on YouTube. So if you've got any questions, do pop them in the chat box and I'll do my best to put them to Simon. Or just say hello. Let us know if you're enjoying the show. That's always really appreciated. Let us know you're out there. That's good to know. So Simon, yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to have this time to sit and chat with you. I'm really enjoying it, and to feature your music. And we're going to move on to the other album, the second album now, Sienna Red, which was which I understand is it's a kind of collection of music that was the mostly Tubby Hayes originals, but also the ones that aren't, their tunes that he played. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Yes, it's music either written by or associated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we tried to pick a sort of mix of things that he wrote, which he'd written that hadn't been recorded before, things that he'd played with his various bands. So the actual thinking behind the album was very much based on my love, sort of in-depth love of Tubby. So I was unearthing. There's a tune on there called Lifeline, which he'd written and it had never been recorded. So that was a bit of a first. So it was all kind of tying in with this thing we've talked about British jazz history and pushing things forward, you know.
Well, I mean, I'm imagining that, you know, talking to all these great British jazz saxophone players, there's probably and there was probably a common thread, a common name that kept coming up, right? And so I'm presuming, but I'm guessing that's where that kind of, you first heard of him through these guys telling you all these great stories.
Tubby was one of those people that even when I went to Merlin's Cave as a sort of 16-year-old, there would be all these people saying, "Oh, you know, so and so is good," but oh, mind you, we had Tubby Hayes, and he was so everybody, all these punters, all the musicians, all the older guys, they all had a story. My mum and dad had stories about Tubby, so it was his was like a mythic name. Then when I became a professional, I was meeting all these top players, Peter King, Bobby Wellington, who were very closely associated with it, and I was getting these amazing insights into this fabulous player. I knew about Tubby's records and I'd heard his records, but I realised what an interesting story he had because he died so young and he'd done so much. Yeah. And it just kind of culminated. The next logical thing was to write a book about him. You know, I was playing his music, working with people and recording with people like Spike Wells and Tony Levin, who played in his groups.
Spike was his drummer, wasn't he? Yeah.
That's right, yeah. But then it just seemed, right, well, they've all got stories. Why don't we put it all together in a book?
So at which point, no, you don't just sit down and write a biography like you've done on Tubby Hayes. This is years of work and research, right? And this is a lifetime of, you know, so at the point you make, because this album's 2008 it was released. Was it recorded a bit, I'm presuming a bit before, maybe a year before. And the book was 2015 or something?
Yeah. Well, the book I started the book in 2003.
Right.
Researching it.
So a real
I was
labour of love.
I was interviewing people. I was really, going through things with a fine-tooth comb. I'm really trying, because a lot of Tubby's story, like a lot of guys that die young, Clifford Brown, Charlie Parker, Coltrane, there's a lot of myth and a lot of things get twisted and they're not quite right. They're sort of fictional.
Yeah.
So I was able to sort of ask these people and get the story straight. So it was a long period of sort of playing gigs, doing a bit of writing, playing gigs, doing a bit of writing. And it was only in 2015 when it appeared. And I think a lot of people were surprised that it was as in-depth as it was. But there's a lot of years gone into working on it,
Well, I mean, it's an astonishing achievement by any standards, and presumably, just researching all this stuff, because although he did die young, he was incredibly prolific. The output and the sessions. I mean, the amount of work that was around then. But like he was doing everything and playing and doing all those broadcasts and TV sessions and radio sessions and live, and then doing the jazz gigs at night and touring all over the place, going to Europe and America. It's just unbelievable, and making records as well. So just to even wade through that, like put it in, and nobody had really put that all together, had they? Am I right? There wasn't really a.
I was always surprised that no one had done it. I was always expecting someone to turn up before me and say, "Oh, I've done a book." So I was the first. I'm sure someone one day will do something else, but because it's such an interesting story, he's such a multi-layered character. It was a massive life. If you consider that his professional career was only 23 years in length. Now, I've been a professional musician for 25 years. I haven't done a tenth of what he did. He was full on for that whole period. It's amazing. He really was. He was one of those people like Charlie Parker that lived every day, 24 hours a day. Fully. He filled every day, and he was an incredible character, and ultimately just a brilliant musician.
Yeah, and so this album is really a kind of homage to Tubby Hayes, but it's I think it's really nicely done because, like you say, you play some of his tunes, but you play the tunes that are associated with them as well, which presumably gives you a bit of. I mean, that must be quite hard, even for someone of your ability and with that thorough dedication to the music and the research that you've done to go in the studio and make that album. It is quite a step, isn't it? It's quite. How did that session go down? Or do you just felt like I've got to get this music down? That's what I'm thinking. I'm
pressure because those two albums came out. Introducing came out in the spring of 2007, and so I had two albums out within the space of a year. The first one had sold really well, and there was a lot of expectation. What's he going to do for his second album? And because people have been picking up on the Tubby thing, it was it seemed the most natural thing to do. There was more pressure.
Well, you're putting yourself out there, aren't you, to get shot down? I mean, there's a lot of Tubby Hayes fans who are probably whatever you do, they're not going to like it, So, it's a very big step. It's a brave move. I mean, well, it was. You pull it off.
Brave. Ways. One of the ways you can spell it is ill-advised, because I think I would have done a better job at it if I'd left it a couple of years. But you're young, things are happening, you want to make records, you want to do stuff. And it was all the albums are very much products of their time. And that's all I can say about them. They belong to a time. It's the way I was thinking at that time.
That's what a record is, isn't it? It's a snapshot, really. And I think that's all we can get. I think it's a fantastic record, and you do a great job at it. And we're going to play another ballad here, folks. This is, how you say, Surya? Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
And this is a Tubby Hayes tune, one of his originals. And this is from the album Sienna Red. And it features, once again, John Christensen on piano, Andrew Clunder on the bass. But this time with Spike Wells on the drums, who played with Tubby Hayes. So, I mean, there's a fantastic connection there. And this is recorded in Tunbridge Wells in September 2007. So here we go. Absolutely beautiful. That's a ballad there called Surya, and that features on Simon's album Sienna Red, which won an award for. Now I've got to get this right. This was it was a very prestigious award, which was the Jazz Journal magazine's Critics' Choice Album of the Year. So that must have been nice, Simon, to get that.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Well deserved as well.
Really surprised. As with all these awards, very surprised to get those things, but lovely nevertheless, you know.
So we were just briefly chatting there, but I think it'd be nice to mention, of course, John Christensen now, who's been, who worked through he's on all your records, and who you worked with a great deal, and I know as a very close relationship you had with him musically, and I think fair to say something of a bit of a mentor for you. And when you spend a lot of time on the road, driving up and down the motorways and sharing journeys.
John taught me, lots of people taught me bits about music in general, but John taught me how to be a musician, actually a working musician. He was in all the quartets and quintets and other bands that I had during that point. Anything that I did, John would be the first call. He was such a delightful person because he was a brilliant, world-class musician. He was an incredible human being. I learned a lot from him because he was a man that turned professional at the age of 44, which proves to me that it was never too late.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably point out for some of the listeners, because John Christensen. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of delay on the old internet there, mate. So I'll just.
Yeah, are we okay?
Is it your end? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So John Christensen, of course, played with Ronnie Scott Quartet. Is that right? Am I right? And he was recommended by Bill Lesage.
Yeah, all of Ronnie's band.
All of Ronnie's bands.
Yeah, he played with Ronnie's Quartet, Quintet, and Sextet from 1979 to when Ronnie retired in '95. So
I remember seeing them at the club. I remember going to watch them quite often.
Yeah, I think we all did.
Yeah, and it was just fantastic. And he always had he often spoke of Ronnie, didn't he? And he would often quote him, his little jokes and little things like that.
Do the gags. When you were traveling with John, you'd get all the gags. Yeah. When I travelled with John, it was like Ronnie was with us all the time, and I loved it because I thought Ronnie was a huge influence. I loved Ronnie. So John, I was getting that direct again, as we were saying before. These were people who were telling me these stories and these jokes. It felt really like you were part of something. Amazing. John was a lovely man. He was a fantastic jazz piano player. He swung all the time. He was adventurous. He played anything. He was up for any kind of gig, and even into his 80s. He had incredible energy. One of the last gigs that we did, we drove up to Shropshire, there and back, and it was a long day. And he was 82, and he drove, and he played his ass off on the gig. And then when we drove home, we didn't get back to about 4 a.m.
That's
amazing. And he was incredible. He was
just another day's work for a jazz musician, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
And the thing with him, our relationship was very close because he was almost like a grandfather to me. And I miss him. I really miss him. To this day, I miss him. He was an incredible part of my life.
Yeah, he was a very sweet man. I was fortunate enough. Well, we played together, didn't we? We were saying in the quartet.
Yeah, we did the quartet. Yeah,
and I first played with him with Bobby Welling's quartet. He booked me for a few gigs, and I remember John being very, very sweet, very nice, very welcoming, very friendly, and I remember feeling terribly out of my depth and absolutely terrified playing with these great legend musicians, but they were very nice, these guys. And I think because they, like, as all a lot of great jazz musicians are, they're really it's just about the music, isn't it? It still is for them. Like, even after all, they just want to play, and they just want to have a good time, and they want the music to be as good as it can be. And if you're the drummer for that night, they're gonna treat you like you're the drummer, and in the band.
I've always thought that there's we've talked about this before. Anyone can play with someone once.
Yeah,
anyone. When I've done it, when I first started out, I'd jam with someone, and their name would go on who the people I've worked with. I think everyone does it, but when they start calling you again, and you work with them, John. John and I worked a lot. He didn't need to come and play in my band. He didn't need to do that.
He loved
it because he liked it.
Yeah.
You have to remember that you're there for a reason, and they're there for a reason.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. So I think what with the time's marching on, but we'll just get a couple more tracks in now. So we're gonna fast forward a bit. I mean, we've mentioned the book, and we could talk a lot about that. But all I can suggest is that people just really, really go and check it out. It's an astonishing piece of work that was, rightly and justifiably, highly lauded, and you did an amazing job on that, Simon. And so what a great achievement there. And then you the third album you've made is from 2013, and this was released. This is out on vinyl, ladies and gentlemen. I know some people like vinyl.
Yeah.
And so this was another quartet recording with a slightly again John on the piano, but Alec Dankworth on the bass, who plays with you quite regularly now. Is he your regular bass player? Or
he's still in the quartet. I'm not entirely sure I've still got a quartet, Buster, but he did it when we work.
Of course, young Stuart's with you now as well, isn't he?
That's right, Stuart does. I mean, it's a very flexible, as you know, it's a very fluid thing, the quartet. And I like playing different people. So people do, there's all kinds of Stuart Barker does it sometimes, Alec does it, Simon Thorpe does it. There's various people. Yeah.
And Robin Aspland tends to be on the piano now.
Yeah.
Does he?
It'll either be Robin or Rob Barron.
Right.
Either of those two, depending on who we can get.
Yeah. And this album's got the great Clark Tracy on the drums as well. Right, so this is a lovely little groove. I didn't quite get this. So the album is called Square One, and this is a lovely kind of boogaloo on this, which is called Shepherd's Serenade. Is this an original, or is this?
No, this is written by trumpet player Dizzy Reese. It was written for his Blue Note album in the 50s, but it didn't sound like that. It was a straight ahead 4/4 thing, and we decided that we'd try and give it a bit more of a Blue Note feel. So I came up with this arrangement,
fantastic,
and that became the first track on the album.
It sounds great. It works great. This is Shepherd's Serenade, ladies and gentlemen.
Is that, yeah.
Wonderful stuff, and that was Shepherd Serenade from the album Square One by my guest Simon Spillett, and it's been amazing having you here, Simon. It's been really enjoyable. It's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you, but unfortunately the time has absolutely whizzed past, as it always does. So I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. Okay. It's been a real pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for coming on and sharing your time.
Thank you for asking me, Buster. It's been lovely to chat. It's been great to share some music and have a chat. It's been lovely.
Good. And I was going to say, we were just saying about, there's obviously not a lot coming up immediately, but you do have a few other projects in the pipeline, don't you? With this Tubby Hayes big band that you've recently. Well, was it like end of last year, or the beginning of this year?
We started at the beginning of this year, and we had things in the book. Swanage Jazz Festival. We were the closing act there, the Hearts Jazz Festival, both of which have been deferred until next year. But we, as of yet, we still have a gig at the 100 Club in London on November the 2nd.
Great,
and,
okay.
That's
fingers crossed.
Yeah, so big band music at Tubby Hayes, a lot of charts that haven't been heard in public for a long time, certainly not in central London.
So these are Tubby's arrangements that you unearthed, and then you because I remember you put a call out on Facebook, didn't you? You said, "Oh right, I've got this music. Who wants to play it?" Yeah, well, it wasn't quite like that, but you wanted to get this music heard again because there's all they've not been recorded, have they? These charts.
There's some that have been recorded. There's a lot that haven't been recorded. Right. So I was very lucky to have got hold of those. It's a very exciting band, and it is a proper jazz big band. It's full of great jazz soloists.
Oh yeah. Did you play at Ronnie's on this?
I did a guest with the Ronnie Scott's big band playing the same arrangements, but we did our first big band gig in Atherstone, up in the Midlands, in the middle of nowhere. It was a guy's birthday party. He wanted Tubby Hayes big band, so he got this.
It just a function gig. Fantastic. Yeah. So the Tubby Hayes big band.
We were in a marquee, and this guy said, do you know what? Would you like to bring a big band? I said, well, it's going to be this amount. He said, yeah, okay, it's my 51st birthday. I'll go for it. And that was the start of it, really. And it was a great gig. First time I'd really ever done anything like that. So fingers crossed for next year with the big band, I think.
Well, we wish you all the very best with that. I'm sure it'll be a great success. And I look forward to hearing that and coming and checking that out. Thanks for coming along. It's been absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Simon Spillett. So we give it a virtual round of applause there. We can't hear them, but they can hear them. So that's good.
All right.
So that just leaves us to say thanks to you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. We do appreciate it. We hope you enjoy the show. We hope you appreciate the music. If you do, then please consider a donation. It really does help, and that will be split between me and Simon. And that will go a long way for us right now. Do check out my next show. Also, don't forget to sign up on the mailing list, and you'll get the link sent to you 1 hour before each event. I'm back next week with amazing piano player Nikki Isles, and that'll be really interesting. Absolutely wonderful musician, composer, and very charming, and it'll be a lot of fun chatting to Nikki about her music. And now I just want to end. I'm going to play out. Because we can't leave this, I don't think, without mentioning. Of course, we lost somebody, a very big figure in the British jazz world, in the world of music. I think it's fair to say, who features in a lot of those pictures that you've seen tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That is, of course, Mr. Peter King. who sadly passed away very recently. And I know you work with him a lot, Simon, and you were very, you played together a lot, and he was really something else, wasn't he?
Oh, Peter was world class without a shadow of doubt. I think, one doesn't want to say the best, but without a doubt, I think that the most accomplished jazz saxophone player I've ever shared a stage with. Just phenomenal, just amazing.
And I've it's maybe a little bit self-indulgent, but I thought there was just a nice little link here, because Peter came. I booked him to come and play with my trio at my club, and I thought it was 2 years ago, but when I looked, it was 3 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And he was not feeling too well. He'd had a bit of trouble, but he was fine. And he when he played, he was just absolutely all there, wasn't it? It was amazing. But you very kindly came along as a sort of standby. Do you remember? And I asked, I said, well, because I didn't know if he was going to be able to make it. I mean, until I just was like, look, come if you feel like it, come, and if you don't come. And so you were kind of with us as well, very kindly. And then of course he turned up, and we ended up playing. We had a wonderful time, and my wife, I've recently, she took a little bit of mobile phone footage of us trading some fours on something. And I know you're not a great fan of people mobile phoning on gigs, but I just thought it would be a nice little trip, a nice little way to end the show tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our little tribute to the late great Peter King, and all the great fun we've had. And once again, thank you to Simon for coming along. And this was filmed at the Orpington Jazz Club in September 2017. Thanks very much, everyone. Good night. We'll see you next time.